Hi, I'm Eric with HyprMX. We're here at Pocket Gamer Connects in London, and I'm joined by Jon from Huuge Games. Welcome.
Thanks so much.
So Jon, you are Executive Vice President of Investment and Strategy at Huuge, right?
Yes, indeed. It's a lot of words. I am.
It is a lot of words. Before we dive into that, let's rewind a little bit. Tell us about your career. How'd you get into tech? How'd you end up here at Huuge?
Okay, got it. So I'm one of the lucky few who spent my whole career in gaming. I've never been outside of it, so I'm this narrow in terms of skill set. I started at a games company called Jagex, the makers of RuneScape. They've been around for 15, 20 years, trucking along. My job there was simple. It was to help turn around the company and then sell it. And we did that to a Chinese mining company and then took it public on the Shanghai Stock Exchange, which was a crazy 3-year experience that really kind of changed my outlook on life in a lot of ways. After that, I jumped ship. I joined a venture capital firm called LVP, or London Venture Partners. They were super early games investors, early stage, so they write seed checks to people like Supercell and Unity and a bunch of others. Did very, very well. And I spent 2 years cutting my teeth on investment there. After that, I jumped ship, moved to Berlin, and joined Huuge Games, which is where I currently am after 3 years. In fact, 3 years as of last month, I think. And so my role is really a blend of everything I've done so far. It's investment, as you've heard, and it's also strategy. So it takes the bits of Jagex that went well, takes the bits of LVP that went well, and kind of combines the two in this publicly listed company's kind of context.
Yeah, speaking of which, you've been with Huuge since it was essentially VC backed, right?
Yep.
And then into the IPO in Poland and the public offering?
Exactly. So part of the job when I joined was to help get the company ready to IPO. We hadn't decided on an exchange at that time. We hadn't decided on a bunch of things. But Anton and I met in an Airbnb in London, had a bottle of wine. I went to go and be introduced to him. It turned into a job offer, which turned into a job, which turned into Berlin, which turned into all of this.
That's an awesome story.
Yeah, no, that's 10 drinks and 2 hours worth of discussion that I'll save for another time. But yeah, that's how this came about. I was encouraged by the idea that the company wanted to IPO. There's only a handful of times, I think, in a career where you can join a company that's that close and kind of go through that process. I'd done it once with Jagex in a similar way, and so I thought, yeah, let's do that again. Turns out that taking a US registered company public in Poland is complex and hard and slow.
Go figure.
I know, who knew? So yeah, that was a hell of a process. It took a while, but we got there. So February last year, we got through the IPO, super successful IPO process, great bankers, great team. And we're here a year later in February of 2022, looking back and thinking, well, we've come quite far, 4 transactions, 4 M&As, an IPO, 11 publishing deals, 2 restructures, a bunch of stuff, product releases and everything in between. It's been a bit of a whirlwind.
Yeah, speaking of which, I think a lot of us know Huuge for a lot of social casino titles that are fantastic. In recent years, even more kind of expansion into casual genres under, I think, Coffee Break Games.
Briefly through Coffee Break Games, we had some focus there for a while. We also experimented in hyper-casual with Tap Games. I'd say right now our biggest kind of casual offering is Traffic Puzzle. Right. Traffic Puzzle is this match 3 game. It's kind of an innovative take on match 3. We published the game. It was actually developed by a Polish team over in Wrocław called Picadilla, and we published them in mid-2019. And then kind of a year later, in fact months later, we started talking about M&A, and that turned into a longer discussion, and everything fell into place in early 2021, about a year after we published. And so from there, we acquired the assets of the game, and they've been with us ever since. We finished handing over the product to our team late last year.
Okay.
And now it's fully in Huuge's hands, and that was, I think, a really great transaction for us because it's our fastest growing product. It's a good example of this diversification strategy that we've been talking about in the press so much. And it's done really well. We're really happy with it.
And is that model, I think it's become a lot more popular in the last few years in terms of publishing a title, and then when the success is verified, acquiring and bringing it in-house. Is that something in terms of strategy that you're going to continue at Huuge?
Absolutely. What a lovely question. No, it is. So if you look at the way that M&A has been going in the industry for the past couple of years, it's been heating up rapidly. I mean, we saw more transaction value in February of this year in the games industry than we have in the whole of 2021, which was, again, double what 2020 was. So it's kind of exponentially blown up. And what that's done to valuations in the private market is send them skyward. And so there's a lot of people in roles like mine and in similar roles that are thinking, well, how do we keep consolidating the industry and doing these M&As, but in a way that is kind of value sensible and all that kind of stuff. And so publishing was a really great way for us to do that, where we date the company before we get married, which is a much, much nicer, more friendly way of doing things and getting to know each other. before big money changes hands. And it's been working really well. Traffic Puzzle is one example. We published 4 other games last year. We'll do 6 this year. And really, it is a means to an end whereby we have those acquisitions happening.
And as a developer or a studio that's interested in either being published by Huuuge or potentially getting acquired, investments, do you have any kind of tips, do's, don'ts, the best way to approach that when you really are looking for that kind of deal?
Yeah, get in touch. I mean, it's a super competitive industry. We think we have a pretty good offering. I think the difference between us and some of our peers is that we have quite an established process that takes you from early stage investment through a publishing deal and then a predetermined call option agreement. So that means that as soon as the company hits certain revenue metrics, which will be largely driven by our marketing spend, of course, we then just have the right, a pre-agreed right, to acquire the business. And so that's a very easy, simple, straight line to draw mentally from where you are today to a $50, $100 million acquisition. And that, I think, is quite a neat selling point, and it tends to resonate really well with founders of earlier stage companies. I'd say if you really want to make a case for yourself, come prepared. Everybody wants numbers, but ultimately we recognize that very rare is it now that a company has perfect numbers and they can just turn up and ask for money. So instead, if you have a great vision and an idea of where you're headed, come and pitch to us. We're super approachable. We have a team that's waiting all day for those pitches. And if we believe in it and you convince us, then it's as simple as just writing a check and saying, let's get to work. And in 6 months or 12 months when the game launches, you have us and our balance sheet and our marketing team behind you. And from there, provided things go pretty well, there's a check in the post 6 months later.
Right, it could be a traffic puzzle scenario, right?
Hopefully.
And I imagine, these deals, it's funny in today's kind of market, some of these deals are not small, but when you compare them to some of the recent mergers and acquisitions, like we're talking the Take-Two's and Zynga's, the Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard, these are huge numbers. I mean, my jaw dropped when I saw some of these. What's your reaction? Okay.
Everyone's.
So same thing.
You could feel the earth rumble as everybody in the industry hit the deck at the same time.
But do you think these are good, bad, neutral for the industry?
Yeah, they're great. Yeah. They're great. I mean, there's some debate about the consumer perspective versus the investor perspective. But ultimately, the games industry has evolved from being this thing where you could create Flappy Bird and release it and it goes nuts into this hyper-scientific, but still very creative industry in which the battleground is analytics, it's marketing, it's sophistication, and it's resources, like dollars, right? And so really the only way to succeed with that mix of ingredients is to have somebody behind you that has all of those things. Most games companies just don't have all of them. Maybe they have one aspect or two, but actually to have very deep pockets, a really big team, and lots of sophistication on the data side, it's hard, it takes time to build. And so come and find somebody who's already done that over the last decade or 2 decades, and partner up. And we're seeing that happening loads in the industry. So from my perspective, it makes perfect sense. It's a tough time to be a buyer. It's a great time to run a games company. And so, yeah, from the seller's perspective, I'd be grinning ear to ear. I would.
Nice. Well, listen, we've talked a lot of nitty gritty, kind of like higher level strategy.
Sure.
I want to close this up with a very simple question, which is if we were to open your phone right now, what's the last game you played?
Okay. Well, it would be Huuuge Casino. I'm only kidding. No, it wouldn't. It would actually be one of the games from a startup called PlayPack. It's unreleased. It's a merge game that they're working on, and it is super encouraging. Everybody seems to have a merge game in today's market. It's like the theme of the month, the flavor of the year. But I think when you get it right, it's really addictive. And to give you an example, I was at breakfast yesterday with my lovely girlfriend for Valentine's Day because I thought I'm not going to have dinner with you. I'm going to hang out with a bunch of industry bums. So I'll try and do something. So I turn up with roses and like 20 minutes in, she's playing a merge game on my phone and has given up on her breakfast. And I think, okay, well, at least the game's good.
What's your girlfriend's name?
Ellie.
Happy Valentine's Day, Ellie.
Nicely done. Nicely done. From me. Yes. Thanks, man.
Well, Jon, listen, this was fantastic.
Sure.
I really appreciate you coming by.
Thanks for having me.
The show.
Of course, thanks.
Cheers.